I'm going to read my severance review, and that is it. I'm not going to explain myself. I'm just going to read it, okay? Here we go. I wonder how many people felt understood after watching this film. An Apple original, Severance, 9-episode series with the first season available on Apple TV+. Personally, I don't think I felt understood after watching the series. Something about the approach to the story and the ending made me feel uncomfortable because I got lost. Even though the course of events unfolded in a way that made sense, I still didn't like how uncertain it made me feel when it comes to the actual purpose and meaning of the series. I think meaning and context started strong in the beginning, and somewhere, maybe halfway, around the middle, my reference point faded away and held very little significance, or at least significance that was evident. I intend to give spoilers and an in-depth review, so I just want to make that clear. I think the ending challenged and overpowered the quality of the work of art in general. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm frustrated by the fact that whether I enjoyed this film was hard for me to decide because of the lack of ability to know what it meant by using only my common sense. I think this distracted me from the relevance and story itself. I feel as though I had to use more than common sense in order to really receive this story as enjoyable, understandable, relatable, and fully developed. I think for this work in particular, I disliked it for that one reason. I don't like the idea of someone watching this and being completely confused simply because, again, you may not be able to grasp the motive behind the story because it requires a little bit more than the common sense. I believe a perfect example of this experience is when our main character, Mark, is asked about the visceral experience of being severed. And I think the series could have raised the same curiosity in the audience due to the visual aesthetic and cinematography being less abundant in emotional depiction of the experience and being rich and practical and more logical impressions of what the experience of being severed could be like. I think the cinematography and writing of the screenplay was very intelligent and masculine in nature, which I think explains the absence of emotionally saturated scenes and moments that were charged with just pure emotion. Maybe I wanted less of an explanation of what being severed feels like and more of an illustration of severance being the only explanation for what the audience was shown visually. My favorite quote from the series is recited and is said by those who are being disciplined for their rebellious and disobedient behaviors. The quote says, "Forgive me for the harm I have caused this world. None may atone for my actions but me, and only in me shall their stain live on. I am thankful to have been caught, my fall cut short by those with wizened hands. All I can be is sorry, and that is all I am." I think the relevance of this passage goes over the head of the observer if they aren't catching on to the motives for why each character ends up severed. Let's start by defining both the word sever and the word severance. One of the meanings of sever is to separate, apart from the whole. One of the meanings of severance is the action of ending a connection or relationship. Based on the work of art, I think those who undergo the severance procedure are intended to be seen as an example of everything that makes us incomplete as a human race. I think our characters' decisions to split their realities into both life and death is meant to be perceived as a form of mockery and ignorance in regards to the extent they are willing to go just to be able to experience heaven and hell at the same time. But I think where our characters go wrong is that they think reality should be embraced for both its angelic and traumatizing nature. They think if heaven and hell could coexist, that would be a perfect balance between good and bad, God and devil. I feel we learn that even if a person chooses to experience both good and bad at the same time, what really defines who they are is whether they accept good and bad as two parts of a whole or separate forces battling to see which force is greater.